I had no idea that a simple dare could unravel my life in the way it did. I wasn't prepared for the chain of events that started with a small, offhand comment. And yet, here I am, sitting in my car, typing this out in the dead of night, not knowing if I'll ever go back to the life I once had. The thing is, it wasn't even the push that got to me. That was just a physical action, a slap on the chest that could have meant nothing, or so I thought. It wasn't even the fact that her friends were behind it, egging her on like they were pushing a button that had been waiting to be pressed. No, what did it was the moment I looked into her eyes, saw that glimmer of something I didn't recognize, and realized I wasn't a part of her world anymore. Let me start from the moment it all began, right after dinner. We'd been together for 6 years, and by all accounts, things were good. But like most people, I was a creature of habit. I didn't dig too deep. I didn't try to analyze every little change in her behavior. I believed that as long as things were steady, we were fine. But that night, well, that was when I should have known something was off. We were at a gathering, nothing fancy, just some drinks with a few of her old friends. I'd been trying to get her to spend more time with me, to be honest. Lately, she'd been disappearing into her phone, her mind, and sometimes I could see her thoughts drifting far away from me. But I chalked it up to work stress, to the busyness of life. Everyone's distracted, right? So, when she suggested we go to this get-together, I was more than happy to accompany her. I wanted to show her that I still cared, that I wasn't letting things slide. When we arrived, things seemed normal enough. Her friends were already there, laughing, drinking, making small talk. But as I looked around the room, I noticed something different. A subtle tension in the air. I wasn't sure if it was me, if I was just imagining it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We made small talk with the others for a while. I'd been nursing my beer, just listening to the chatter. Then, her best friend, Claire, dropped a comment that seemed harmless at first. "You two are so cute together," she said, looking at us across the table. "But, you know, Nadia, you're really good at getting him to do whatever you want. I wonder how far you could push him." I laughed nervously, not sure where this was going. Nadia didn't respond right away. She just stared at her drink, and I noticed a slight shift in her posture. That's when I realized she wasn't laughing with us anymore. Something was simmering beneath the surface, something I had missed. "Come on," Claire prodded. "I dare you. I bet he wouldn't even notice if you just pushed him a little. Just see what happens." The words hung in the air. The others at the table chuckled, their laughter filling the space, but I could tell Nadia was no longer in the same place mentally. The thing is, I couldn't even tell you why I didn't stand up then and ask her to cut it out. Why didn't I say something in that moment? Was it pride? Was it because I didn't want to be that guy who overreacted at a joke? I don't know, but I should have known better. Nadia looked up at me then, and I swear to you, there was something in her eyes that I had never seen before. It wasn't love, or affection, or even amusement. It was something colder, something sharper. I can't put it into words, but I could feel it. Without a second thought, she stood up, walking toward me with that same intense look in her eyes. The room fell silent, and I suddenly realized that I was no longer in control of the situation. She pushed me. It wasn't a playful shove. It wasn't a cute moment of teasing. She pushed me with force, like she was trying to make a statement. The air left my lungs for a moment, and I stumbled backward, my mind racing. My heart was beating out of my chest. I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't believe what had just happened. There was a moment of stunned silence. I looked around, and I saw her friends, some of them grinning, others looking a little uncomfortable. But no one spoke. No one asked if I was okay. I looked back at Nadia. She didn't apologize. She didn't seem concerned. In fact, she seemed almost pleased. "You okay, babe?" she asked, her voice casual, like she hadn't just crossed a line. I didn't answer. What could I say? I was in shock. I thought I was overreacting. Maybe I was. But deep down, I felt something break. "Did you do that just for a laugh?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. But instead of an apology, instead of her realizing that she had done something wrong, she just stood there, staring at me like she was waiting for me to say something else. And in that moment, I knew I was done. I walked out. I didn't say another word. I just grabbed my jacket, walked out the door, and into the night. The world felt heavy as I stepped into the cold air. And now, hours later, I'm sitting here in my car, not sure what to do next. I can't shake the image of her face, the look in her eyes, the way she pushed me. And the worst part? I don't know if she even realizes what she's done. I drove aimlessly for hours. The cold night air hit my face as I opened the car window slightly, trying to clear the fog in my mind. How could something so small, so seemingly insignificant, change everything? I was in a state of disbelief, but at the same time, a part of me couldn't deny the gnawing feeling in my gut. This wasn't just a harmless joke. This wasn't the woman I had married. I tried to make sense of what happened. Why had she done it? Why had she pushed me in front of her friends like it was nothing? Was it a test? A challenge? Or had it always been there, bubbling beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to come out? Nadia had always been strong-willed, but this was different. This wasn't playful or teasing. It was a calculated move. It was like she was daring me to react. Like she wanted me to do something, anything, but instead, I just walked away. That wasn't like me. But in that moment, something inside me told me I couldn't stay. I couldn't stand there and let her treat me like that. The worst part? I couldn't even bring myself to call her. I couldn't even bring myself to send her a text. I just left, and that scared me more than anything. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew us. But now I wasn't so sure. Eventually, I ended up at a diner a few miles outside of town. It wasn't the place I usually went, but I needed somewhere to think, to be alone. I sat down at a corner booth, ordered coffee, and tried to make sense of what had happened. As I sat there, the silence was deafening. I kept replaying the scene in my head over and over again. Nadia's eyes, the coldness in them, the way she didn't even apologize, and most of all, the way her friends reacted. Some of them had laughed. Others just watched, unsure of what to do. What hurt more than the push itself was the fact that no one stepped in. No one told her to stop. No one even questioned what was happening. And that's when it hit me. My marriage had always been a performance for everyone else. For years, I had been playing a role, the dutiful husband, the provider, the one who made everything look perfect. But behind closed doors, I had no idea what was really going on in her head. No idea what she was really thinking. I pulled out my phone, still staring at the screen without really seeing it. I debated calling her, but the thought of it made my stomach turn. I wanted answers, yes, but I didn't know how to even start asking the right questions. I didn't know what to say. What was I supposed to say to her after that? Why did you push me? It sounded so simple, but I knew the answer wouldn't be that simple. There was no going back. I kept staring at my phone, scrolling mindlessly through the messages and notifications that had piled up, but none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the question that kept repeating in my mind. Why did she do it? And then, just as I was about to put the phone down, I saw it. A new message from Nadia. Where are you? Can we talk? The message was brief, nothing more than a simple request. But for some reason, it felt like a demand. And in that moment, I realized I didn't want to talk. Not yet. Not until I understood what was really happening. But I couldn't avoid her forever. I knew that. The longer I stayed away, the more I felt like I was losing myself in the process. Losing the man I once was. The one who believed in honesty and trust. The one who thought his marriage was something unbreakable. I stood up from the booth and paid for the coffee. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get out of that diner. The air was still heavy with confusion, but now there was something else too. A sense of dread. What was going to happen when I finally went back home? What would I find when I walked through that door? Would she be sitting there, waiting for me with an apology, or would she be cold, indifferent, like she had been the moment she pushed me? The questions kept swirling in my head, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized something crucial. I had no idea who Nadia really was anymore. And worse, I wasn't sure if I even knew who I was in relation to her. As I drove back home, my thoughts raced. I didn't have answers, but I knew this. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to let it be swept under the rug. I wasn't going to let this be just another misunderstanding or a silly moment. Something had shifted, and I had to figure out what it was before it consumed me entirely. The night had turned colder, and I could see my breath fogging up the windshield as I drove. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the same person who had walked out that door earlier. And no matter what happened next, nothing would be the same again. I pulled into the driveway, my heart pounding in my chest. The house loomed in front of me, dark and quiet, like a stranger I didn't recognize anymore. It had been our home for 5 years, but tonight, it felt like I was standing outside a place I didn't belong. I stayed in the car for a while, the engine idling, not sure if I wanted to walk inside and face the storm waiting for me. but I knew I had to. I took a deep breath, forced myself to step out of the car, and walked up to the door. My hand hovered over the doorknob for a moment before I pushed it open. The moment I stepped inside, I felt the weight of the silence. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to find the right words in my head, trying to calm the whirlwind inside me. Then I heard it, the soft sound of footsteps approaching from the living room. Nate. Her voice was shaky, uncertain, like she wasn't sure if I would even respond. I turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway of the living room, her expression unreadable. Nadia's eyes met mine, and for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd see the apology there, the understanding. But all I saw was something distant, something cold. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice still soft but tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Anger? Maybe both? I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, letting the silence hang in the air between us. The questions were flooding my mind, but there was something else, too. Something I hadn't felt in years, doubt. Nadia's brow furrowed. "What's wrong with you? You just walked out without a word. After everything." Her words trailed off, and I could see her swallowing back whatever emotions were threatening to spill out. I took a step closer, my pulse racing. "You tell me," I replied, the frustration creeping into my voice. "Why did you do it? Why did you push me like that, Nadia?" Her face flickered with something. Shock, maybe, but she quickly masked it, replacing it with a calmness that felt too rehearsed. "It was a joke. You're making too big a deal out of it." She shrugged, as if it was no big deal, as if her pushing me in front of all her friends, laughing about it, didn't mean anything. But I couldn't let that go. "A joke," I repeated, my voice rising. "You pushed me. You humiliated me. In front of your friends. You think that's just a joke?" Nadia took a step back, folding her arms over her chest defensively. "I don't know what you want me to say. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I demanded. "What is going on with you, Nadia? You've been acting distant, cold, and now this? You've changed." She looked down at the floor, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I haven't changed," she muttered, but I didn't believe her. "Then why did you do it?" I asked again, softer this time, almost pleading. I needed to understand. My mind was spinning, trying to piece together the fragments of everything that had happened. Nadia's eyes flicked up to mine, and for a moment, there was something raw there, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in her in so long. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that mask she always wore when things got uncomfortable. "I don't know, okay?" she snapped. "It was just a stupid thing. You always act like everything is perfect. You never say anything when I need you to speak up, and when I finally try to do something spontaneous, you freak out. I didn't think it was such a big deal." The words hit me harder than I expected. "You thought that was spontaneous?" I laughed bitterly. "Pushing me in front of your friends? Humiliating me for a laugh? What did you expect to happen?" "I didn't expect you to leave, Nate," she said, her voice quieter now, but the frustration was still there. "I didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of it. I thought maybe it would wake you up. You've been so," she trailed off, like she was searching for the right words. "So distant." Distant? The word stung. I'd been distant. I had been there every day, hadn't I? I paid the bills. I worked late hours to make sure everything was fine. I didn't think I was distant. But maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been so focused on the things that didn't matter, the routine of it all, that I didn't see how far away she had drifted. "I don't know what you're talking about, Nadia," I said, shaking my head. "I've been here. Every step of the way. I've given you everything." "But not me, Nate. Not really," she whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, everything about this conversation felt wrong. The way she said it, the way she avoided looking me in the eye. It wasn't just about the push anymore. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't even begun to understand. I stared at her for a long moment, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what to say anymore. The trust, the connection we once had, it was slipping away, piece by piece, right in front of me. And in that silence, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted to myself before. This might be the end of us. The silence that followed hung thick in the air, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I couldn't look at her. I didn't know how to process what had just happened. All this time, I had been so focused on the surface, on keeping things moving, on maintaining this image of a perfect life. and now it was falling apart in front of me. Nadia stood there, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, but there was no anger in her eyes anymore. Just emptiness. She wasn't looking at me the way she used to, with affection or warmth. It was like I was a stranger, someone she no longer recognized. I tried to steady my breath, but the panic was creeping in. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had been ignoring. The subtle signs, her detachment, her distant glances when we were together, the way she spent more time on her phone than with me. But I never confronted her. I never questioned it. I thought it would work itself out, that we were just going through a phase. But here we were, and there was no denying it anymore. This wasn't just about the push. This wasn't just about a dare or a stupid joke in front of her friends. This was about something deeper, something I hadn't been willing to see until now. I finally spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. What happened to us, Nadia? When did we stop being a team? She flinched at my words, like I'd struck her. For a moment, I thought she was going to walk away, but instead, she took a shaky breath and sank down onto the couch. She buried her face in her hands, her body trembling as she let out a long sigh. I don't know, Nate, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how we got here. I stood there, not knowing how to respond. I wanted to comfort her, to reach out and hold her, but there was a part of me that couldn't bring myself to do it. A part of me that was scared. I've been so angry at you for so long, she continued, her voice soft but filled with something I couldn't quite place. But I couldn't tell you. I couldn't even admit it to myself. I didn't know what to do anymore. I felt like I was drowning in everything. In this life, in this relationship, and I didn't know how to ask for help. My heart twisted in my chest. All this time, I had assumed everything was fine. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, in my own work and routine, that I hadn't even noticed she was struggling. I didn't know you felt that way, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I thought we were okay. I thought we had everything. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. We never had everything, Nate. We had what we wanted, what we thought we wanted. But I've been lying to myself for so long. And I think you have too. Her words hit me harder than anything else she'd said. I didn't know how to respond. I had been lying? What had I been lying about? I thought I was being the best husband I could be. I thought I was doing everything right, giving her everything she needed. But now I was questioning everything I knew. Nadia, what are you saying? I asked, my voice trembling. Are you saying you don't want this anymore? Us. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't understand. Regret, maybe, or sorrow. But there was something else there too. Something I hadn't seen in her for a long time. I don't know, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I want this, but I know I can't keep pretending. I can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not. I don't know if I'm the person I was when we first met. And I don't know if you are either. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't the woman I thought I knew. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the person I thought I was either. The silence stretched on between us, suffocating us both, until I could no longer bear it. I walked over to the window, staring out into the dark night, my mind racing. How did we get here? How did we go from being that young couple, full of dreams and hopes for the future, to two people standing on opposite sides of a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge? The cold realization settled over me. We had been drifting apart for so long that we didn't even recognize each other anymore. And maybe, just maybe, this was the breaking point. The moment when we finally had to face the truth. I turned back to face her. So what happens now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Nadia didn't answer right away. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. But this time, there was no anger, no defensiveness. Just raw emotion. I don't know, she said quietly. I don't know what happens next. But I can't pretend anymore, Nate. I can't keep living in this lie. And in that moment, I realized something that I had been avoiding for far too long. This wasn't just about the push. This wasn't just about her friends or some stupid dare. This was about us, about everything we had been ignoring for far too long. And now, we were both paying the price for it. I thought I knew her. I thought I understood everything about our life together, every little nuance that made us tick. But in that moment, standing there in the dim light of our living room, I realized how wrong I had been. It wasn't just the physical push, the joke that had shattered the facade. No, this was deeper. This was about everything we hadn't said, All the moments we'd let slip by without addressing the cracks forming beneath the surface. I stood in the silence, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. "I can't keep pretending anymore," she had said. Those words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't stop them from spiraling. What did it mean? Did she want out? Or was this just a wake-up call? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that everything I thought was solid between us had started to crumble, and I was left trying to figure out what was real. Nadia sat on the couch, her hands wringing in her lap. She was no longer the woman I married. No longer the woman who would laugh at my stupid jokes or curl up beside me at night with nothing but warmth in her eyes. That woman was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone I had stopped seeing, someone who had buried her feelings for too long. "I never meant to hurt you, Nate," Nadia whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know what happened. I just lost myself in all of this. And I didn't know how to find my way back to us. To you." I couldn't breathe. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, that we could fix this. But how could we fix something that had been broken for so long, and neither of us had the courage to face? "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. They tasted bitter, like a confession I wasn't ready to make, but I couldn't help it. I had been lying to myself for too long. And now, I saw everything clearly for the first time. She flinched at my words, but I wasn't sure if it was the truth she couldn't handle or the fact that I had finally said it out loud. The truth that we had both been avoiding. The truth that we had been slowly suffocating our marriage, one quiet moment at a time. Nadia stood up then, her movements slow and deliberate. She walked past me toward the window, where the faint glow of the streetlights seeped in. I watched her, unsure of what to do next. I wanted to reach out to her, to pull her back to me, but there was a distance now, a gap I didn't know how to bridge. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," she said, her voice barely audible. "I don't know how we got here." I didn't answer at first. Instead, I just watched her. She looked so small, so lost, standing there in the dim light. It broke something in me, a part of me that had been numb for too long. "We stopped talking," I finally said, my voice rough. "We stopped listening to each other. And now, we're both paying for it." She turned to face me, her eyes filled with tears that she refused to let fall. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Nate. But I felt like I was losing myself, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to tell you I needed more than this." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had always thought I was enough for her. I thought that being there, being dependable, was all she needed. But I had been blind to the things she needed that I couldn't give her. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but it wasn't aimed at her. It was aimed at myself. I had been so wrapped up in the routine, in the daily grind, that I failed to see the slow unraveling of us. I had missed the signs, the subtle shifts. And now, I was paying the price. "Is this it then?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. "Is this how it ends?" Nadia's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I had once known. The woman who had stood by me through everything. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know if we can fix this, but I don't want to give up without at least trying. I owe it to both of us to figure out if there's still something here worth saving." The air in the room seemed to grow heavier with every word. Her words were fragile, tentative, like she wasn't sure if she was giving me hope or preparing me for the worst. I stood there, my hands trembling as I ran them through my hair. This wasn't the conversation I thought I'd be having tonight. I thought I was walking into a simple discussion about her jokingly pushing me in front of her friends, but it had turned into something much bigger, something that threatened to tear us apart. "I don't know if I can do this, Nadia," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not, when I feel like I'm losing you." Her face crumpled, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to fix it, Nate. I didn't know how to tell you that I needed more." I felt a strange tightness in my chest. The weight of her words, the raw honesty in her voice, made me feel like I was suffocating. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't. The truth was, I didn't know if we could come back from this. But as we stood there in the dim light, the silence pressing in on us, I realized something. I had to decide if I was ready to fight for this, or if it was already too late. And in that moment, I wasn't sure which one I wanted more. I stood there in the dimly lit living room, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. I could feel the tension building, thickening the air between us. I wanted to speak, to say something that could fix everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, all I could do was stare at her. This woman I thought I knew so well, but now I wasn't sure who she really was anymore. Nadia took a deep breath, her eyes not quite meeting mine. It was like she was bracing herself for something. For what, though, I didn't know. She had laid herself bare in a way I hadn't expected. She admitted that she had felt trapped, isolated, and disconnected. She told me she didn't know how to fix it. But all I could think was, how did we get here? I don't know if I can go through this again, Nate, she whispered, barely audible. I don't know if I can keep pretending. I've been holding this in for so long. I don't even know how to get it out anymore. The vulnerability in her voice was almost enough to break me, but something inside me resisted. This wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about the push or the jokes or the dare in front of her friends. This was about something deeper, something I had been avoiding for years. I walked over to the couch and sat down, the room suddenly feeling so much smaller. I needed space to think, to process everything she had just said, but it was hard to find clarity when I was drowning in confusion. I didn't know, I said, my voice low. I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know you were feeling like this. Nadia sat down beside me, her hands trembling in her lap. I didn't know how to tell you, Nate. Every time I tried, I felt like you weren't really there. Like I was invisible to you. And maybe I was invisible to myself too. I stopped asking for things because I didn't know what I needed. I just shut down. My chest tightened as I heard the pain in her voice. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, so focused on the routines of life, that I hadn't seen the cracks forming in our relationship. I hadn't noticed that she was disappearing right in front of me, and I had done nothing to stop it. I thought I was doing everything right, I said, the words coming out like a bitter confession. I thought I was being the husband you needed, the provider. But I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were going through. She reached out and touched my arm, her fingers light and hesitant. It wasn't just you, Nate. It was both of us. We both stopped seeing each other. We let the world get in the way. We let everything else come before us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence was deafening, and all I could think about was how many times I had missed the signs. How many times had I chosen work over our relationship, or my own comfort over her needs? I had taken her for granted, assuming everything would just fall into place. But things never fall into place on their own, do they? I looked at her then, really looked at her. There was a tiredness in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. She was exhausted. Exhausted from trying to hold on to something that felt like it was slipping away. I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we had. I'm scared, Nate, she said, her voice trembling. I'm scared that I've already lost you. I'm scared that you don't love me the way you used to, that you've already checked out, and I don't know how to fix it. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding back until now. I hadn't realized how much I had been pretending to be okay, pretending like everything was fine when it was falling apart right in front of me. I haven't checked out, I said, my voice breaking. But I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to fix this. She turned to face me, her eyes searching mine, as if looking for something. Then let's figure it out, together. I don't want to give up on us. But we have to try. We have to be honest about what's wrong, or we'll never fix it. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. I didn't want to give up on us either. But the question lingered in my mind. What if it's too late? I don't want to lose you. I whispered, my voice barely audible. But I don't know if we can come back from this. She reached for my hand, her touch warm and familiar, but there was an uncertainty in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I don't know either, Nate. But if we don't try, then we've already lost. And that was the truth, wasn't it? We had both been living in a world of half-truths, avoiding the things we didn't want to see. But now, we were standing on the edge, and it was up to us whether we jumped or turned back. The silence between us stretched on again, but this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was the kind of silence that held the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. And as I sat there, holding her hand, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would be the same again. We couldn't pretend anymore. The choice was ours to make. I didn't know what time it was when the silence finally broke. It felt like the night had stretched on forever, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the weight of everything we were facing. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear the words she was saying until she finally spoke again. Nate, Nadia whispered, her voice filled with an edge I couldn't quite place. I've been thinking about us, about everything we've been through. And maybe it's time we ask ourselves the hard questions. I looked at her, my mind racing to keep up with her thoughts. Her hand was still in mine, but it was no longer warm. The connection was different now, less certain, more fragile. She was thinking too, her mind calculating, measuring every word. And as much as I hated to admit it, I was too. The truth was hanging in the air between us, suffocating me, and I couldn't avoid it any longer. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was scared of what she might say, but I needed to know. "I mean," she said, pulling her hand away, "that maybe we've already come to the end of this road. Maybe there's no coming back." Her words landed like a slap in the face. I couldn't breathe for a second, my heart in my throat. My mind was spinning, but the only thing I could hear was the sound of my own pulse, pounding louder with every beat. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, we can't be done. We can't just give up on everything." But Nadia wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring down at her hands, her fingers twisting together like she was trying to hold herself together. It was as if she had already made up her mind, as if the decision had been made long before I even realized what was happening. "I'm not saying we should give up, Nate," she said softly. "But I think we need to face the fact that we've been holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore. I've been pretending, and so have you. We're not the people we were when we started, and I don't know if we can ever get back to that." The words cut through me, deep and sharp. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was wrong, that I hadn't been pretending, that I had been doing my best to make things work. But deep down, I knew she was right. We hadn't been the same for a long time. We had both been holding on to a version of us that didn't exist anymore, living in the ghost of our past, while the present quietly slipped away. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room, trying to gather my thoughts. "So what now?" I asked, the frustration in my voice barely contained. "Do we just walk away from everything we've built? All of it? The years, the memories, everything?" Nadia didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a sorrow I didn't know how to process. Then, finally, she stood up and walked toward me. "I don't want to walk away, Nate," she said, her voice breaking. "But I don't know how to keep going like this. I don't know if I can pretend anymore." The weight of her words settled over me like a thick fog. I felt suffocated, trapped in a reality I couldn't escape. "What do you want from me, Nadia?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost pleading. "Do you want me to let go? To walk away too?" She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "No, I don't want you to walk away. But I want us to be honest with each other. I want us to admit that we're not okay, that things aren't working, and that maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance for us, but only if we're willing to face the truth." Her words struck me like lightning. She wasn't asking me to walk away. She was asking me to face something deeper, something more painful. She wanted me to acknowledge that the love we had was no longer enough to keep us together, that the years we had spent together had been built on an illusion. But I couldn't let go of that. Not yet. I couldn't accept that everything we had was just gone. "I don't want to let go, either," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I'm even the person you need anymore. And I don't know if you're the person I thought you were." There it was, the truth we had both been avoiding. The truth that had been sitting in the dark corners of our lives, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. We had been living in a house built on lies, and now that house was crumbling. Slowly, quietly, and I didn't know if we could rebuild it. But Nadia's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw the woman I married. The woman who had held my hand through every hardship, who had been my partner in everything. "We've both changed, Nate," she said, her voice quieter now, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "But I'm still here. I'm still trying. And I think, deep down, you are too. But we have to decide if we're willing to fight for this. If we're willing to fight for each other. Because if we're not, then we might as well let go now." Her words were both a plea and a challenge. And as I stood there, facing the woman I thought I'd known so well, I realized something. She was right. We could either fight for what we had, or we could let go and walk away. But what if fighting meant breaking apart first? What if the only way to save us was to confront the things we'd been too scared to see? And as I looked at Nadia, I realized that this was the hardest choice I had ever faced. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if I was ready to make it. I stood there, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, but Nadia's words lingered in the silence between us. We had both changed. We both felt lost in our own ways. And yet, here we were, still standing together, still looking at each other, still trying to make sense of everything. I looked at her then, really looked at her. I saw the tiredness in her eyes, but also the same spark that had drawn me to her all those years ago. It was still there. It was buried beneath the confusion and the pain, but it was still there. And something in me shifted. I don't know if we can fix everything, Nadia, I said, my voice soft but steady. But I do know this. I'm not ready to give up. Not yet. And I know that I still want to fight for us. I don't want to walk away from this, from you. I still believe in us. I believe we can figure this out together. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in what felt like ages, she smiled. It wasn't a smile filled with the weight of everything we'd been carrying, but one that held hope. Hope for the future, for something better, something we could build together. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out for mine, and this time, it felt like we were reconnecting, like the distance between us was finally closing. I don't know if I deserve you, Nate, she whispered, her voice filled with both vulnerability and strength. But I want to try. I want to try to be the woman I was when we first met. I want to be the woman who stands beside you, who shares everything with you, not just the easy parts, but the messy ones too, because I don't want to lose you. I pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling her warmth against me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were both really here, not just physically, but emotionally. We had been holding on to so many things, pretending to be okay, but tonight, we had finally let go of the facade. We had acknowledged the cracks, the pain, and the hurt, but we were also choosing to rebuild. I don't want to lose you either, Nadia, I murmured into her hair. I don't want to lose what we've built, even if it means we have to tear it all down and start fresh. I want to fight for us. I want to make things right. And as I held her there, in that quiet moment, I realized that the hardest part was over. The pretending, the avoidance, the fear. We had faced the truth, and now, for the first time in a long time, we were standing on the same ground, ready to build something stronger, something real. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know what the future would hold, but in that moment, it didn't matter. We had each other, and that was enough to begin again. We'll take it one day at a time, I said, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. But we're in this together, right? She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't a tear of sorrow. It was a tear of relief, of hope. We're in this together, she whispered. And with that, I knew we had taken the first step towards something new, something beautiful. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was the start of something better. Together, we would rebuild. Together, we would face whatever came next. And this time, we would do it with honesty, with love, and with a commitment to each other that could withstand whatever storms life threw our way. Because, in the end, that's all that really matters.